All right, in this video we're going to give you an introduction to nested loops. And so our first example is sitting right up here. It's a method called public static void rows and columns, and you can see we have one for loop inside the other for loop. Our outer for loop counter is called row because when we do this you're going to see that this actually, the first outer one, controls the rows, and the inner one has a value called columns. And we're going to look at the output. And if we ran this one, we'd have to actually give these two values, num rows and num columns. So I'm going to go ahead and just say, let's say we let num rows be 2 and num columns be 5. So that means that we're going to go from 0 to 2 there and from 0 to 5 here. We're going to keep track of our variables. So when I start in this first for loop, row starts with the value 0, which is less than 2. So I go ahead and go in here, and column also starts with the value 0, which is less than 5. And so I'm told to print out the letter R, the value for row, which is 0 right now, the letter a comma, the letter C, and the value for column, which is 0 right now. Now when I finish this command, I'm and in my inner loop I do my counter. So it says columns plus plus, so that goes up to 1. And I do this again. You'll notice that row is still 0, and I had a space here that I printed, so I'm going to be right here, row 1. Nope, I'm still in row 0. I just said that. So I am in row 0, comma, column 1. And then column goes up to 2. But and that's good because we're keeping our columns less than 5, so we do this again. We're still in row 0, column 2. Column goes to 3, so we're in row 0, column 3. And then we're at 4, row 0, column 4. And then we hit 5. And then we see, wait a second, 5 is not less than 5. So we break out of the inner loop, and we get the system.out.println line, which now means we're on a new line. We have a carriage return. And now we go to our outer loop, which was at 0, and it says to go row plus plus. So I go to 1. And then I start the inner loop all over again. It's 0 again. So this time when I print it, row is 1 and column is 0. Column goes up to 1, row 1, column 1. Column goes up to 2, row 1, column 2. Column goes up to 3, row 1, column 3. Column goes up to 4, row 1, column 4. Column goes up to 5. I'm no longer less than 5, so I go up here. Row goes up to 2. I'm no longer less than 2, and I'm done. I did skip a carriage return in there, but nothing gets printed here. All right, so let's try another one like this. Got kind of the same idea here, only here I have x, which starts out with the value 0 right here, and y that starts out with the value 6 right there. I'm told to print x plus y, so I'm going to print 6, and I have a space. And then the next thing I'm going to do is watch my loop here, and I say, okay, y minus equals 2, so y goes down to 4, which is greater than 1. So I now print x plus y, which is going to be 4. And it goes down by 2 again, which is greater than 1. And I add 0 and 2, so I get 2. And then it goes down by 2 again, but I'm no longer greater than 1. So I go to a new line, because I've got this print line here. And now x goes up by 1. So I've got 1 here. And we're going to do those same values again here, because y starts at 6 again. So I'm going to get 7. This goes down to 4. I'm going to have 5. This goes down to 2. And I'll have 3. Goes down to 0 again. And now I'm on my new line. X goes up to 2 this time. And now, let's see. This goes back to 6. So I have 8, 2 and 6, 4, 4 and 2 gives me 6, and down to 2, 2 and 2 gives me 4. I'm down to 0. This goes up to 3, breaks me out of that loop, and I'm done. All right, so let's do one where we're going and writing a for loop nested for loops to print these. So first off, hopefully we notice here that we've got the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then if I look at the next line, I'm like, oh, those are all the squared numbers. I squared 1, squared 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And here, oh yeah, I cubed 2, cubed 3, cubed 4, and so on. All right, so I'm going to start off by thinking about the number of rows I have. I have 3 rows. And so I'm going to do a for loop. And I notice that the rows are cut at the power, so let's use the letter P. So the powers on the first row were 1. So I'm going to start at 1 rather than 0 because it makes sense here. And P is going to be less than or equal to 3, P plus plus. And then I'm going to have another for loop in here. And I'll just call this the number n. And all of these started at 1, so I'm going to start it at 1. And I notice that there's 6 numbers in each one, so n is less than or equal to 6, n plus plus. And now I can see that my numbers that I was putting there, system.out.print, and I was taking n to the power of p. So I can say math.pow n comma p. And it looks like there was a little space added until the next one. And after I'm done with this inner loop, I need to go to a new line, so system.out.println. And we've got that one done. All right, let's take a look at this. Here, we're simply asked to find the output for count. You'll notice that count starts at 0. Our outer loop goes from 0 to 20 up by ones. Our inner loop goes from 0 to 1,000, and we're asked to increment count every single time, and then we print count at the end. Now we are not going to trace this because while that inner loop goes 1,000 times, that's a lot, and I do that for every time I do the outer loop, and the outer loop goes from 0 till it's equal to 20, so that's going to be 21 times. So to see this answer, I simply multiply those two numbers. My answer is going to be 21,000. All right, for our last example, this kind of is getting you prepared for one of our labs coming up. What we want to do is get this pattern drawn out. So again, I look at how many rows for my outer loop and how many columns for my inner loop. So I see that I have 5 rows, so I'm going to go ahead and say for int, and I got to decide, am I going to start at 0 or 1? But then I notice, row 1 has 1 star, row 2 has 2 stars, row 3 has 3 stars. I think I'm going to want to have my rows starting with the number 1. And I'm going to have r less than or equal to 5 because I have 5 rows, r plus plus. And then my columns for int c, or actually I'm going to use stars because each row has so many stars. So let's use the word star. Okay, so for int star, and my star, I start out with 1 star, right? And the number of stars I have matches up with the number of rows. So I'm in row 1, I have 1 star, row 2, 2 stars, and so forth. So I know that star has to be less than or equal to r, the number up here. And I'm going to do star plus plus. And that's going to help me get the right number of asterisks or stars. So system.out.print, I print a single star here. And let's just check and see how that works. So when r is 1, the inner loop goes from 1 to 1. That would print 1 star. When r is 2, my inner loop goes from 1 to 2. And that would be a star for when the star is 1 and when it's 2. All right, I can try the last one. When r is 5, this is going to go from 1 to 5, so that'll give me the 5 stars. Then the only other thing I need to do is to get us on a new line each time when I'm at the end of a row of stars. So a system.out.println, and I need those curly brackets, and there we go.